Everyone pictures cowboys feasting on endless steaks beside roaring fires. But on the vast cattle drives of the Wild West, the shocking truth about what cowboys really ate on the trail was far grimmer. Surrounded by 2,000 cattle, they almost never tasted fresh beef. Each steer was a $60 investment, too valuable to eat. So the real cowboy diet was jerky so tough it could break teeth, beans by the pound, and biscuits kept alive by sourdough starter tucked beneath a blanket on freezing nights. Why did Hollywood get it so wrong? And what did this brutal menu do to the men who lived it? The answer starts with the real economics behind every bite. At the height of the cattle drive era, between 1866 and 1886, crews pushed herds of 2,000 to 3,000 cattle north from Texas toward the railheads of Kansas. Each animal on the trail represented a fortune in waiting, worth $40 to $60 at market, a sum that could cover a month or more of a cowboy's wages. The arithmetic was simple and unforgiving. Every steer lost to the cook fire was a direct hit to the trail boss's bottom line. With 5 to 10 million cattle driven over these decades, the scale of the operation meant that even a handful of missing animals could spell disaster for a drive's profit. Ledgers from outfits like Charles Goodnight's show the relentless focus on maximizing returns. Cowboys knew the rules. Fresh beef was strictly rationed, reserved only for the sick, the dying, or the dead. Slaughtering a healthy steer without permission was treated as theft, punishable by firing or worse. Legal codes in Texas and Kansas backed up these unwritten laws, with jail time or even vigilante justice for anyone caught butchering herd cattle. The economic reality shaped every meal. The herd was not a food source, but a moving investment, guarded mile by mile for months on end. In this world, the dream of nightly steak dinners faded fast, replaced by the hard logic of profit and survival. Day after day, the Chuckwagon fire brought the same handful of staples to life. Jerky, tough as old boots, began as strips of beef salted and left to dry in the sun for 3 to 5 days. By the time it reached the cook's hands, it needed a good soak or a long simmer to be chewable. Most of the time, the real flavor on the plate came from what cowboys called Texas butter, a simple gravy made from beef grease and flour. Bubbled in a cast iron skillet until it turned golden and thick. Beans formed the backbone of every meal. Pinto beans, in sacks of 50 pounds, were measured out at 1 to 2 pounds per man each day. The cook woke before dawn to soak them, then left them to simmer in heavy Dutch ovens for hours, sometimes overnight. By noon, the camp air was thick with the earthy scent of beans and wood smoke. Cowboys had their own names for this daily ration: Prairie fuel and whistleberries, a nod to the after effects as much as the taste. Sourdough biscuits added warmth and texture to the plate. The starter, a living culture, was so valuable that cooks sometimes slept with the crock tucked under their blankets to keep it from freezing on cold nights. Each morning, dough was kneaded and set to rise near the fire, then baked in Dutch ovens with coals piled on the lid. When supplies ran thin, hardtack, dense, nearly indestructible bread took the place of biscuits. Its shelf life stretched past 50 years, but to eat it, cowboys had to dunk it in coffee or gravy just to soften the bite. Every meal depended on the trail cook's patience and skill. With little more than flour, beans, salt, and grease, he turned monotony into survival, one pot at a time. Charles Goodnight's invention of the Chuckwagon in 1866 changed the way cattle drives operated, transforming a surplus army wagon into a rolling kitchen and command center. The wagon's design featured a rear chuck box with shelves for flour, sugar, and coffee, and a heavy compartment below for cast iron pots and Dutch ovens. Barrels strapped to the sides held water, lard, or even extra firewood. Every item was chosen for durability and weight, since the wagon could carry up to 2,000 pounds, just enough for food, tools, and every cowboy's bedroll. Flour, the backbone of biscuits and gravy, filled 200 to 300 pounds of the load. Coffee, a non-negotiable staple, packed another 100 pounds, while sugar accounted for 50. The cook guarded these supplies with absolute authority. In camp, strict rules applied. Never ride a horse near the wagon, never touch the food without asking, and never disrupt the cook system. Breaking these unwritten laws risked more than a scolding. Discipline could be swift in public. The cook's pay reflected this power too. While cowboys earned $25 to $40 a month, the cook commanded $60 to $100, almost double, thanks to the burden of responsibility. Beyond meals, the cook served as medic, barber, and judge, holding the respect and sometimes the fear of everyone on the drive. The Chuckwagon's order and storage limits shaped every dish, forcing reliance on preserved staples that could withstand months of rough travel. When the Chuckwagon staples ran thin or monotony wore down morale, trail cooks reached for whatever the land or the herd's misfortunes could offer. Son of a Gun stew became a legend of necessity, built from the parts of unweaned calves that couldn't keep pace with the herd. Into the pot went heart, liver, tongue, and kidneys. The brains thickened the broth, while the prized marrow gut, a milk-filled tube from a nursing calf's stomach, added a richness found nowhere else on the trail. Cowboys joked they used everything but the hair, horns, and holler. Spring roundups brought another delicacy, Rocky Mountain oysters. After castration, the cook sliced the organs, rolled them in cornmeal, and fried them in hot grease until golden. The flavor was nutty and gamey, a rare treat that broke the monotony of beans and biscuits. When the herd's losses or luck ran out, the prairie itself became the pantry. Cowboys hunted deer, wild turkey, and rabbits. In lean stretches, even rattlesnakes or skunks found their way to the fire, with scent glands carefully removed. Foraged wild onions, sheep sorrel, and prickly pear cactus offered fleeting vitamins and fresh flavors. But above all, coffee was the lifeblood. Arbuckles Ariosa, with its protective glaze, dominated the trail. By the 1880s, it held 3/4 of the Western market. The recipe was simple: a handful of grounds per cup, boiled until strong enough to float a revolver. Whiskey, locked tight by the trail boss, served for snakebite or cough, not for pleasure. Out here, survival meant making a meal from whatever the world surrendered, and a cook's ingenuity could mean the difference between drudgery and a rare moment of comfort. Trail life demanded a staggering amount of energy. Cowboys burned through 4,000 to 5,000 calories each day, fueled by endless beans, biscuits, and grease-laden gravies. But beneath the surface, the diet was dangerously incomplete. Fresh fruits and vegetables were nearly impossible to haul, leaving meals almost entirely stripped of vitamins A and C. Over the course of a 3 or 4 month drive, the threat of scurvy loomed large. Gums bled, teeth loosened, and joints ached as bodies cried out for nutrients missing from the Chuckwagon staples. Only the arrival of canned tomatoes in the 1870s offered a partial defense, their tart juice prized as much for health as for flavor. Disease shadowed every campfire. Cholera and dysentery, spread by tainted water and unsanitary conditions, killed more cowboys than stampedes or shootouts ever did. Medical logs and Army reports from the era record mortality rates near 1 in 30 among the tens of thousands who rode the trails. For many, the true price of survival was paid in suffering and lost lives, not just in hunger or monotony. Arrival in a Railhead town meant the end of months spent counting beans and rationing biscuits. Cowboys, most just 24 years old, walked off the trail with $75 to $125 in their pockets, a season's pay burning a hole. The first stop was always a restaurant or saloon, where menus promised everything the Prairie could not. Thick steaks, eggs by the dozen, hot bread, and canned peaches. A single meal cost $5 to $10, nearly a week's wage for a drover. Oysters, shipped in barrels of ice, became the ultimate luxury, joined by pies, coffee, and whiskey poured without ration. Saloon owners lured customers with free lunches, pickled eggs, cheese, crackers, hoping the beer would flow. For a brief moment, deprivation gave way to indulgence, but the spree was short-lived. Within 2 or 3 days, most cowboys left town broke, their hard-earned pay traded for memories of full plates and a taste of comfort, before the next drive called them back to the trail. On the trail, each steer was valued at $40 to $60, a price that made fresh beef a rare luxury for the cowboys driving herds north between 1866 and 1886. Instead, they survived on sun-dried jerky, beans cooked overnight, and biscuits baked from starter cultures protected against the cold. The Chuckwagon, invented by Charles Goodnight, carried up to 2,000 pounds of supplies and enforced strict rules, with cooks earning double the cowboys' wages. Yet, even with careful planning and improvisation, like son-of-a-gun stew and wild foraging, nutritional deficiencies were common, and disease claimed far more lives than gunfights. Despite records from trail bosses and supply ledgers, many details about how cowboys coped with monotony and deprivation remain lost. What's clear is that the Hollywood image of endless steaks is a myth. The real story is one of ingenuity and hardship, where survival depended on discipline, resourcefulness, and the relentless drive for profit. Today, these facts remind us that the legends of the West were built on endurance, not abundance.